Welcome to my final methods critique. So my initial draft for my plant project were this gremlin on the left, the color plant drawing in the middle, and the black and white plant drawing on the right. The other two were this diary entry and a cup with a plant in it. Challenges. It was difficult to produce the last two iterations. I remember finishing the cup color drawing in the cup and the diary quickly and easily. Takeaways. Not everyone shares the same opinion as you on your best and worst iterations, and just because something took more time doesn't mean that other people will see it as a better product. I remember my um, diary entry taking like 5 minutes, but people loved it. Conclusion. It was interesting to see your own work through the lens of other people. It was also fun to see where other people with the same instructions took their work. Final iterations for the plant project was this audio diary entry and a series of color images for the based on my worst work, which was the cup, and my best, which was the diary entry. Challenges. I'm inexperienced with Photoshop and photography, so it was really challenging to produce. Ways to improve upon the worst iteration, which was the cup and the plant. Working with a new medium to me and sound was challenging because when I brought the work into class, it sounded way different from my own experience listening to it in headphones. Takeaways is to make sure to listen to a sound piece through external headphones and have someone else confirm that they can understand it or external audio device. There are many things that you can do with a photograph manually to make it look more interesting. It doesn't have to all be done in Photoshop. And conclusion, it I had a lot of fun working in both mediums and I didn't have much experience in. It was fun to see how much work my work differed from my initial draft. Material studies. So the image on the far left was a lamp that I did. This was actually my final iteration. The middle was ball, and the right was a painting I did. These three images I grouped together, but they're kind of different iterations of what a box would look like, and like I kind of changed up the holes. Challenges. One big challenge uh, was to figure out how to change up a cardboard box design to be different from what we know, but still recognizable. And despite my previous experience in cardboard, it was challenging to produce the last iteration. Takeaways. Sometimes thinking about the most obvious answer and sticking with it is the best option. I was trying to alter the design of a cardboard box to make it more unique, and this was completely unnecessary as the changes were so subtle that they seemed insignificant. Conclusion. It was a lot of fun to creating unexpected ways to use a medium and pushing myself to think outside the box. Collaborative material study. So, picture on the far left was our group, and on the far right is the material that we used, the gears, and then the picture on the far left was our initial design for the contraption that made the projector spin, and the one on the bottom was the final, and then the picture in the middle is the projector, and then the pictures on the right were colors that came out from the projector. Challenges. Working with a mechanical headspace was really difficult because it involved a lot of trial and error in getting the gears and mechanical parts working correctly. I never knew what would work and what wouldn't until I had the pieces printed out and sitting in front of me because it's difficult to understand like how they would fit in Rhino. Takeaways. It was important to schedule lots of time for printing out parts, especially when working with a design that has very little tolerance for error. And when given such a short amount of time to finish a large project, it is important to chip at it every day so you succeed in making it through the design window. Conclusions. Despite the end result not working out the way we intended to work, it was a lot of fun working with others, and the result was beautiful. Mind map. So my initial word was compile time that I went with, and it turned into travel. Challenges. My brain already had a pre-existing route it wanted to take with the mind map. It was hard to break away from the path that I wanted to take and just focus on what comes next in the map. Conclusion. It was interesting to see where I started and how I deviated from my initial phrase. I was actually really surprised that this method of ideation worked because I was unsure if I'd be able to come up with a final project based on random words I had on the mind map. Speculative project proposal. So my speculative project proposal was a performance piece of what it would be like to travel around the world during the coronavirus pandemic. This piece mimics previous efforts to set land speed records traveling around the world, except this time I can find whatever options are available during the coronavirus pandemic. And I decided to travel as a flight attendant and mix up self quarantine and driving to other countries and flying, and I would be able to complete this trip during the coronavirus pandemic. Challenges. It was hard to come up with the most efficient method of travel during the coronavirus pandemic. Most ways it takes too much time and you end up finishing a long time after the pandemic would be over. It was difficult to come up with a way to visually represent the piece because I didn't have a lot of previous experience with Photoshop and Illustrator. And it was a lot of fun to let your brain go wild and research an impossible project to make it possible. I got to consider all angles of travel, travel company, and the country into which you travel. It was also interesting to compare the effects of coronavirus to 9/11 and the similarities and differences on how each catastrophe affects air travel. Finding Time Project. The initial proposal was to spend 5 to 10 minutes a day working and creating a video game. By the end of this project, I plan to have a working prototype of a game and have implemented a few mechanics. One of the biggest challenges was Unity. There were often problems with colliders and other programs in the interface that prevented me from making progress. I was watching tutorials and doing similar steps with my own assets and sprites, so it was difficult to even know where I was going wrong. I had a very hard time keeping with the 5 to 10 minute a day routine. I found myself working more than 5 to 10 minutes a day because of lots of time was spent debugging and fixing errors. And the way I started with this project was brainstorm writing sessions and what the story and some gameplay mechanics would look like. Then I worked on the sprite work, and initially I started with the tile map. Then I also had an idle animation, which the character would do if you weren't moving, a whip strike animation, which is where she would use her whip, a walk cycle, and this is my player character sprite blown up. Um, the code that I used, I got from a tutorial. I also spent what you see on the far, on the middle, and on the right is the attributes that you attach to the character of the game. The basically the colliders and what makes the character work. And this also took a lot of time to massage and work out because it wouldn't work the first time. The story: a spaceship crash lands on a planet, the door opens, a girl walks out. I plan to have this a Metroidvania style game, which is a 2D platformer game with leveling up of skills, road traversal, and backtracking. The plan is to have puzzle solving incorporated into the platforming and skills you acquire. I also want to have the player discover their own story with changing outcomes based on village interactions and choices you make in game. I wanted light to be a major mechanic and played into the choice making and puzzle solving. The platform I created was a test level to the introductory sequence when after you crash land, you travel through a forest with your trusty weapon, which is a whip. And this is one scene from my game. It kind of gives you the idea of the interface of Unity and what it was like to work in it. This is another scene. This is like the full test scene. Um, Before working on my game project, I should have worked on simple Unity tutorials because I would have better learned how colliders work. Because in the end, I was only able to make her move, I couldn't make her platform, and it was very frustrating because I put a lot of work into it behind the scenes, and due to errors within the tile map and making the character move, I was like unable to make her move and errors with collisions. It was a lot of fun animating and creating sprites because I could imagine how I could put them together in game, and there was a lot of work put in behind the scenes because of those errors that I mentioned earlier. I wish I had documented this better because what I have here does not reflect the struggle of like fixing errors at all. And the problem with documenting this is because the errors were so subtle that it would take me 30 minutes to scrub through a video and find the one problem that I had with the character, fix it, and then discover another problem. If I was to do this project again, I would have done something simpler like make a one video game sprite per day. Takeaways from class: it was fun to see your work through the lens of other people. Don't be afraid to have your work critiqued in its initial stages because this is where the most growth happens. I loved Wednesday slides. It was a blast to see where everybody's passions lie. And my favorite project was the collaboration project because it was fun to put ideas together in interesting ways to come up with something new and beautiful. Thank you so much for listening.